Welcome, I am Mr. Bird and welcome to this channel and Devlog series. In these Devlogs I will be sharing my progress on World Saga, a world building tool I'm making in Godot. This is a passion project of mine that started a few weeks ago when I was finally done with other conlanging software. Let's see what I've made so far. Since I started this project due to a lack of conlanging apps, I started with the conlanging aspect of World Saga. First I had to set up the basics, like the ability to create new languages and other resources. After that was done, I created a resizable window. This will be very essential to the sandbox-like environment I want to have in my app. That went pretty smooth. A huge help in this are all the nice stuff that Godot just has ready out of the box for you. My biggest complaint with other software was that you had to switch between software so much. That is why I made the IPA table including sound in my app. You will no longer have to switch between your Excel sheet and Wikipedia. You can also very easily romanize your IPA characters, meaning that you don't have to memorize all of them anymore. Also, all the basic stuff that you need to write down for every conlang is now neat and tidy in these nodes, like the stress structure and your syllable structure. As you can see, I also implemented saving and loading directly in the beginning to keep it from becoming a huge task in the future. So after I was done with that, I set about creating a system for keeping track of words. Why words? Because I wanted to nail the Latin to IPA conversion. This is something I was really afraid of to do because it is such a huge task. So after a lot of struggle, this is how it turned out and I'm really happy. Needless to say, I added saving and loading and I considered it done. So now you can type words, the application checks whether the word is valid and it gives the IPA equivalent. You can then assign meaning and type to it, like a noun or a verb. And for the non-root words, you can even select what the root words are. This is really helpful for keeping track what your language comes from, like plants and stuff like that. I then moved on to grammar. Since in other software this is just tables, I figured tables would be just fine. To start with, I created a two-column table that you can add with the click of a button. As you can see, everything is editable for the user, and I wanted a two-column table because this is really nice for things like explanations of why your cases work. After that, I made a table with a controllable amount of columns, which you can use for all the forms that your words are gonna have. This was actually a huge pain to do, because Godot really fucked up the way they use the grid container. So I had to do a whole lot of manual removing of nodes and replacing of nodes, and then I finally got a working grid. But when it worked, I was really happy and I figured this was done. So, some of you may be wondering right now, what makes this grammar so special? Well, I would like to say that this is just a bare bones implementation. Later I will add a lot more features, some even in this devlog, that make working with this table a lot easier and nicer. After this I had the basics for proto-language in place. Many conlangers will know that what you need for the final language is essentially the same as for the proto-language. So I did the good old Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V and that too was done. Now we're almost ready with a minimal viable product. To add something completely different but very essential, I added a tab where you can see what languages influence each other. This is something I find very important and hard to keep track of in Excel or other software, but also something I think is very essential to a nice conlanging family. So I took a lot of time and I made what you can see now. You can click what a language gets from each other language, even the individual grammar tables and each a single sound. This is really nice, but it brought a new problem. See, when I load stuff, I simply loop through all the languages, then load everything at once for a language. This works fine, but what if a language gets influenced by a language that isn't loaded? Well, it just crashes. So I had to rework the loading system a bit to be able to give a second load call that will be called after everything is loaded. After I was done with this, however, everything went fine and this is something I will be able to use a lot down the road. Then I had to tackle the last big thing I wanted to do, sound evolution. Luckily this wasn't so hard and it didn't take long for me to make this little tab. In the first part you can select the IPA character your sound changes will affect. This means you no longer have to remember your own romanization. And then you can select what happens to this sound, what the result is and where this happens, in the coda, the onset of the stress. Lastly, there is a line where you can type the conditions for when this happens, like this only happens between fricatives. And the sound changes are easily movable with the two arrows to get the order you want for the sound changes. And with that, I had finished all the basics I needed. So some of you may be wondering right now, Mr. Bird, you say everything is done, but what about the writing system? And also, why is the video still so long? To that I say, yeah, the writing system, a problem for another day. You see, I don't know how I want the writing system tab to look, so if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments. And for the other question, well, I said the basics was done, but I want more than the basics. There were some bugs, and there was some things lacking that bugged me, so I set about fixing them. And this is the result. The input from the resizable window is no longer blocked by nodes that are beneath it. When scrolling, stuff doesn't go over the tabs in the top any longer. You can now also recolor all the other nodes. And I added two new features, nodes and regions. Both you can add via the add button in the left. The node speaks for itself, it's just a sticky node. You can place it somewhere, drag it around, resize it and type something you want to remember or keep track of in your language. The regions are something I really wanted in other software but never could find. The region is very simple actually, when you add them, it's just a colored rectangle. But it is a colored rectangle with a name that you can recolor and resize, and it will always be placed behind the other nodes. Meaning you can create regions in your project where you will structure your grammar in and your words. This is really nice for stuff like tenses, cases, nouns, and keeping everything neat and tidy. So far I've showed you what I've made, but if you want to try what I've made, there is an itch link in the description that leads to my itch.io page where you'll be able to find all the versions of my project. It does work in the browser, but not very well, so I recommend you download the app. So, what can you expect for updates in the future? Well, the first thing I will be doing is adding more basic features, like I will be improving the saving and loading, making the grammar tables copyable, stuff like that. After that, however, I will be making stuff like a map editor, a character creator, a relation web editor, and stuff like that. I hope that this will one day be a full-fledged world building app. Hopefully you will come along for the ride. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Cheers.